Hello, and welcome to EIHR's 2023-2024 webinar series, Voices of Children and Youth. I am Matthew Good, librarian for the Educators Institute for Human Rights. If you haven't already, feel free to put where you are joining us from in the chat box. I would like to begin by telling you a little bit about EIHR, taking lessons from the Holocaust and other historic human rights violations. EIHR develops teaching materials, convenes training workshops and summits, and supports educator networks to give secondary students a deeper understanding of how egregious conflicts arise and evolve, how justice is served, and most importantly, how we can prevent future atrocities. Here is our executive director, Kate English, with a brief message.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And I will be brief. I just want to welcome you all here today, and especially those of you joining us from overseas, and if you're watching on YouTube after the live event. We are so happy to have you here with us. And I'd like to just mention that this is a free program. We are happy to bring this to you at with no registration fees and so forth. And if you're able to consider donating to EIHR a small amount, or $5 a month, if it sounds like public television here in the United States, anything you can do will go a long way to help us continue with programming like this and with the other work that we do with teachers around the world. You can find the place to donate at eihr.org/donate. Thank you. Thanks, Matthew.
Sure, Kate. Please visit our website at www.eihr.org to find our many resources. This year's theme for our webinar series was voted on by our viewers, and we are excited to continue bringing you a rich variety of speakers. It is often said that a society can be measured by the way it treats its weakest members, and that often includes children. We want to bring that focus in this series and not only bring awareness, but also look at ways you can get involved. We hope you will register for our March and April webinars, and we will send all the links mentioned today in a follow-up email that you will receive. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land where EIHR's office resides. EIHR respectfully acknowledges the Piscataway and Nacotchtank and Acostan people and the elders, both past and present, throughout the generations who have stewarded the land where EIHR gathers. And now I would like to introduce our esteemed panel. Our moderator today is Jacob Martinez. Jacob is a first-year law student at the ASU Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law and is a civil rights activist, which began in 2018 following the Parkland shooting. Ajna Jusić graduated with a degree in psychology at the University of Sarajevo. She attended the Academy for Young Leaders in Civil Society and successfully completed the School of Political Studies of the Council of Europe. She is the president of the Association Forgotten Children of War. March for Our Lives Parkland chapter lead Zoe Weissman joined MFOL in 2019. She is a senior a year after surviving the school shooting in her community and is now a high school senior. Christina Ellis is a 19-year-old African Caribbean American college student and activist. She was the former vice president of a club called the Panther Anti-Racist Union, better known as PARU. Olivia Pituch, hopefully will be joining us shortly, is a 19-year-old activist, a member of the LGBTQ+ community. She served as secretary and social media advisor on the executive board of the Panther Anti-Racist Union and is now a co-founder of Empower Ed. Adnan Pripoljac is a non-formal education professional and activist currently serving as deputy executive director for the Center for Educational Initiatives Step by Step Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina. You can find their full bios in the chat. As we go through this afternoon, please drop any questions into the chat box anytime during the program, and we will be sure to address them. So now I would like to turn it over to Jacob.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Well, it's great to be here with everyone on this. I know we have people from all over, so I'll say morning for me, afternoon for some, evening and night for others, because we are really just scattered all over for this discussion. So thank you all to everyone for being here today. No matter what time it is for you. So we'll jump right into the first question, and for it, I want to start with Ajna. and that is, why did you get involved in or youth organizing and youth activism? What got you into it?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you generally for having me here. So when it comes to activism, I have to say that first reason was that I was a young person in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And generally, when you grow up in Bosnia, you need to understand the past. You need to understand the history heritage that we got from different forces in our country. And for me, it was very, very important to understand what happened and what the kind of path I need to choose in my life. Also, in our educational system, I think that Adnan can tell more about it, but there is no more much lessons about who we are, about the groups in Bosnia. There is just these inter-ethnic problems. And I moved out to the capital city in Bosnia, Sarajevo, and I really wanted to fit in. But to fit in as a youth, you need to understand who are people around you and what you need to understand about them. Also, I think that as a young person, I wanted to understand the culture, because through my childhood, I always listened to stories that culture was the only safe zone during the war, and that people wanted to be inside of the culture environment. And I was really motivated because I don't know what kind of perspective have older people in our country, but I really feel and see that youth people are really active in our country, and I wanted to be there. I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to find a place in which I can tell that I don't know and I don't understand why these group of people are not good for us, why what kind of people we are in our country. So basically that was my aim, and I think that I got there. And from different perspective, as some private part of my story is being child born out of the sexual violence, wartime sexual violence in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then understanding that being born out of rape is kind of also heritage. Your identity became a heritage of the country, and it should be the culture for the future generations to understand what is rape, what happened there, and how all these people live today, not just in Bosnia, but generally in the world.
Thank you, Ina. I appreciate your insight on that. And you mentioned, working in a similar realm to Adnan. So I want to bring Adnan into this conversation as well, and pose the same question and see if you can expand a little bit more as well, because she mentioned that you guys are doing similar work and I've been doing the same, in a similar fight. So what got you involved in activism, and what pushed you to keep doing it?
Thank you, Jacob. I was like out of curiosity, actually, when I was in high school. I started being active in student council, and basically, since I attended this phenomena through schools under one roof, we were under the spotlight of international community, and there were like many organizations working with my school. So basically, I got a chance to get involved. It sounded interesting for me, and one thing led to another, and I ended up working in education, trying to fix all these segregational issues and basically the quality education issues in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I started on a local level at my school as a young activist, student activist. I continued during my university studies, and also my professional career at some point went to the direction of doing different peace building projects in education, different youth development projects and stuff like that. So yeah, from the mere fact that the education was broken in Bosnia and Herzegovina after the war, I just naturally got involved, since I was trying to do the good thing all the time, so brought me in.
That seems to be a common theme among a lot of activists and organizers, is you're trying to do the right thing. And even though, there's a lot of us all across the world and we're all involved with a lot of different fights, That's one general thing I think everyone can just at least coalesce around is we're trying to do the right thing. And that looks different. That looks different in Bosnia than it does in Parkland than it does in Phoenix. And so seeing how, collectively each fight, is so individualized is always interesting to see. So thank you. Next, I want to go to Zoe with the same question. They mentioned that you started, you are from Parkland and the chapter lead for March for Our Lives in Parkland. Obviously we might have an idea of what got you involved, but even with that aside, what pushed you individually to feel that this was something you had to take part in, you had to get involved? What was your driving force?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I initially began my involvement in March for Our Lives. Well, to give context, the high school in my town, there was a mass shooting there, and there's actually a middle school next door. And so a big thing that I always talk about is the ripple effect of one event on our entire community, right? So I wasn't at the high school, but I was outside at my middle school at the time of the event. And a lot of kids my age were. I was only 12. And so because of my exposure to that, I developed PTSD. And at first, I was kind of struggling to find a way to help, I guess, cope with my own trauma, but also feel as if I was making a difference. Because immediately after the shooting, my foundation, the organization I'm a part of, March for Our Lives, was created by a bunch of students at Douglas, the school where it happened. But I always felt like I was too young to do anything. I was only 12. I was in 6th grade in the US. And then I'd say a year later, is when I really felt confident enough to just push myself and join. And so I went to a few meetings and then I slowly became more involved on the state level. And then I just built my way up from there. And now I'm the director of the Parkland chapter here. So yeah.
Thank you. Insightful. It's I think people fail to realize sometimes how, just because something happens to an individual community or an individual person, it's hard to realize that ripple effect that comes out of it, where it's not just students that were in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas at the time, but the community around it or the family members and people from all across the country who might not have been immediately right there. But there's so much outside of that could happen. So thank you, Zoe, and thank you for being here. Next, I want to go to Christina. Same question. What is your driving force and what caused you to get involved in advocacy and activism?
Absolutely. I feel like I share the same motif a lot of panelists here today is saying getting involved, early on in life. I got involved in high school, at my high school that I graduated from. There was a book ban that was issued on BIPOC books and diversity and inclusive materials. And when that book ban happened, when that material ban happened, it kind of, set a fire in me of like, I always say this, and it's very true, that growing up as, a person of color in America in public K-12 schooling, sometimes it's very hard to see yourself represented in a lot of materials and in a lot of content in school. And if it is, as an African American, it's normally just, one lesson or one chapter about slavery, but there's more to our story besides that. And I didn't want other students who look like me, people of color, to, go through education where their culture and their story is banned. So that is why I got involved.
Thank you. And unfortunately, that seems to be something that's becoming more and more prevalent these days. So thank you for fighting, and hopefully we can continue to fight that fight and make sure that we're not erasing history, because that's important. And finally, for this first question, I want to jump over to you, Olivia, and we'll just keep it on the same theme. What was your driving factor to become, to join the fight, in activism and as an advocate?
So first of all, my apologies. I've been having technical difficulties, so hopefully you can hear me okay and everything. I had to join from my phone. When I was around a sophomore in high school, I started to get really involved in just political issues. We were seeing a lot happen in the world around us. A lot was happening at Christina and I's high school. And my mom actually really helped me kind of see what was really happening in the world. I'm very lucky to have a mom who's very involved. So she was kind of helping me be exposed to these things and like really have a good understanding of them. And I realized immediately that it was messed up. So I immediately tried to get involved. But I came out actually around the end of my junior year. So by the beginning of my senior year, I was just out to like close friends and close family. This was still a very scary and new thing for me. And I was met with a ban in my school district on books about LGBTQ plus people, about BIPOC people, like about all of these people. That basically it just made me feel even more like alone and felt like maybe I shouldn't have even come out in the first place. It was like it very much attacked who I'd worked so hard to gain the confidence to be. And I instantly knew that I wasn't going to let anyone else feel like how I did for so long. And I wanted to make sure that everyone was able to read these books that helped them feel like they weren't alone, that they weren't doing something wrong, that nothing was wrong with them. So I really wanted to just get involved to make sure that these books were back in libraries and back in schools where they could be helping kids and giving them confidence to be themselves, or helping them realize that they're not alone in this world. So that's like the biggest reason that really made me get involved.
And we're grateful for you doing that. Thank you so much. And that's, I mean, I think that's what's so important about, no matter what space we're fighting in, what we're organizing around, it's to make people's lives better. That's kind of the point I just want to keep, going back to is, no matter what it is, it's about either having safe schools, having safe environments, having welcoming schools. And as long as we keep doing that, as long as we keep those fights up, that's all we could ask for. And I think that's a perfect segue into my next question. A lot of times it's hard to see, any sort of action, when you're organizing, you've been an activist for years. Sometimes it can be kind of defeating because you don't see the exact results that you want to see, but you have to keep doing it anyway. And sometimes, those accomplishments might be very small. Sometimes they might be big. And so my question to you, and we'll start with you again, Olivia, is what changes have you seen that you're most proud of since you've started organizing?
So, because I've been, doing it for a little bit now, and I started right when things were so intense with the book ban. I got to see quite a few successes in the battles that I was fighting. Sorry, excuse me. And I'm very, very fortunate to be in that position. We were able to get the book ban overturned in our school district, which was huge. And that took a lot of work, and we were very happy to see that. And we also saw, well, actually, the thing that I'm probably most proud of isn't getting the ban like reversed. It's probably seeing how many people band together because we called out that topic and we called out that issue. We just made it known. We made the issue known. We said, hey, we're going to be here out in front of the high school protesting. It was everybody else that decided to come out. It was everybody else that made sure that that message was spread and made sure that they were there and made sure that they had rides. Like this was like before the buses showed up. I mean, like this was, people really worked to get there and be there and show up. And when we had our big community protests, there were people from other school districts, other places, people who didn't need to be there. So it was incredible to see, like when we were first fighting the issue, we felt so alone. We felt like we were the only people with this opinion. We felt like we weren't going to get anywhere. So to see that we weren't even close to alone, we were probably in the majority, that was insane to see. And ever since, the school has been so, like everybody in the school district has been so determined to not let the school district become what it was. We just had elections recently, or school board elections, and we completely flipped the board to make it an entire school board of people who want progressive education, people who want to see all books, all people, who want to see like inclusivity. So I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, getting to see that our work is continuing to manifest there. Like, I'm graduated now. I don't go to the high school anymore. Like, my dad is on the board, and my siblings go to the school, but I am not there anymore. So to see that the work that we worked so hard for is still happening, probably at an even higher level than when I was actually there, that's probably what I'm most proud of, and most happy to see that we made a mark on the school district that will always be there.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, huge congratulations to you and Christina on that, because school board elections are contentious. I mean, those are the battlegrounds these days. And so to hear that you completely flipped it and have a progressive education, taking the majority there is huge, and that means a lot. So great job on that. And with that, I want to piggyback over to Christina. What have, if it's similar to that, you can maybe double down on that, or if there's something else that you've been most proud of in your time in activism, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. I do actually share the same sentiment that Olivia just shared. But I kind of want to add that not just where we graduated from, but I'm seeing, like, a lot of districts and a lot of students who have, like, as this movement has evolved, nationwide, not just in York, Pennsylvania, this is a nationwide, a worldwide issue, of censorship. I've seen a lot of students just find their voice, and that is what I feel is, like, the most significant. It's bigger than just us. It's bigger than York, Pennsylvania. It's bigger than us all here today. It is a worldwide thing. And to see us all come together from different parts of the world, different time zones, it's just amazing to me to see that, like, we are able to double down under one good cause, which is intellectual freedom and, diversity, which is just great. So that's what I'm most proud of, to know that the world is coming together for one good cause.
Yeah, thank you. That's all we could ask for, right? Coming together under one good cause. Zoe, we'll send it over to you. What has been your proudest accomplishment since you've started in the organizing space?
Yeah, so I think that March for Our Lives as a whole has done so much in such a hostile climate, because in the United States, and specifically in my home state of Florida, it can feel near impossible to get anything done. We have a legislature that historically has doubled down on gun freedoms and allowing people to have access to guns who might not necessarily should have access to those guns. And right now in my state, we're actually seeing a reversal of some common sense policies that were passed immediately after the shooting in my community. So it can be very discouraging to see those types of things. But at the same time, I think my biggest accomplishment was the march that I helped organize with March for Our Lives in Parkland in June of 2022. We had over 2,000 people from our town attend. We had a bunch of different speakers that come from all different aspects of survivorship, whether they be parents of victims, survivors of domestic violence, mass shooting survivors. And the day after our shooting, the US Senate announced support for the first bipartisan bill involving gun control in decades. So that honestly was the most proud moment in my activism career. But I think also just the fact that I'm able to maintain my space in this organization, and my organization still can thrive even amidst all of these threats to our safety, and our livelihood in schools and just everyday life, is also a success in and of itself.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I can completely, I remember when we organized March for Our Lives in 2018, and I organized here in Arizona, and we had rounded the Capitol. We had done a full 1.5 2-mile march, and when we got back to our starting point, there were still people leaving, and the crowd ended up being about 30,000 people. And it's awe-inspiring to see so many people come out and so many people support, where like was said earlier, you think you're alone, you're not sure how much support you have, but then when there's that opportunity to come out and really manifest that support, it's so strong. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you for continuing to organize. Obviously, it's hard to talk about guns in the US, but the reason that the NRA and so many organizations like them are having problems right now is because of the work that March for Our Lives and others are doing. So thank you for keeping up the fight. Adnan, we'll go over to you next, with the same question. What has been your proudest accomplishment, or proudest moment that you've had so far?
Thank you. When I think about it, I mean, taking into consideration that in Bosnia and Herzegovina we have a highly segregated educational system in terms of ethnical divisions and let's say perspectives on a history and the perspective of the other people, other ethnicities, other religious groups and stuff like that, and it's very segregated. And what I would consider a great accomplishment so far of people who are involved in this issue is that we managed to provide the alternative for at least some people, that they can experience actually learning with other people, meeting other people of different ethnical backgrounds, despite of the system that is designed to be dividing people. So when I was finishing my high school and entering the university, we founded this NGO called Association of Secondary School Students in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where people from different parts of the country run the organization as high school students. They get to travel around to get in contact with their peers of different ethnical backgrounds, different religious backgrounds and stuff like that, which is something that is a total alternative to the mainstream formal education agenda. So I would consider that as a major success in terms of the topic. And in my personal maybe stance, I think the kindergarten that my children are currently attending is not ethnically segregated. So, and I'm at the board of the kindergarten. So, I mean, there's this small hope that sometimes in the future we will no longer have this ethnically segregated education in Bosnia. So, keeping the hope and the possibilities that new generations can live together and can learn together without the divisions is something that I consider highly valuable success in that. And then there was also just one more point. We have these segregated schools, and there was also initiative at some point that they wanted to make more schools ethnically segregated, and it was stopped by young people. So basically, it didn't get worse in the 25 years, which is also something that could be considered as a success.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's, I think that's always exciting seeing when, there's these bad things that could happen, these bad changes that people are trying to make, by people that have been in power forever. And it's young people, people under, 30, under 25 that stop it. It's always inspiring. And I think
under
that push
20,
to
actually,
keep going.
under 20.
Yeah, and that's incredible. That's exciting, and keep up the good work, because I mean, it's important work. We'll go to Ajna. Ajna, if you want to jump in and just offer what's been your most proudest moment.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the Forgotten Children of War Association, we gather pretty much, let's say, neglected and invisible population of the children born out of war. Within the term of the children born out of war, I think on the children born out of wartime rape, peacekeepers, babies, and children whose father were the members of the humanitarian organizations that are involved in war missions. Generally, for this category of people, we didn't have any kind of law. As a population, they suffer from the social rejection, political rejection, family rejection. They have been the victims of the different kind of violence. So discrimination and stigmatization were very high. Also, together with those children, we talk also about mothers, survivors of wartime crimes, and I think for importance of information is that we, as a planet, we didn't have any kind of law that gonna give human rights to the children born out of wartime rape. So the most proudest moment of for my in my life is that moment that we made a Bosnia and Herzegovina first country with the law on the civilian victims of war, in which children born out of war are recognized, and 3 decades after the war, they can exercise the rights and they can have the equal possibilities inside of the democratic system. So on the legal part, that's it. But also on the social part, it was as I told before, and Adnan also, there is a big ethnic issue in our country, and it was a really tough decision to go out and to share your story, because one of the biggest problems was for children that they were marked as the children of enemies. So I'm really proud that we gather and that we find that strength to speak out about our stories. And the maybe most important part of this, that is youth togetherness in that process, because we are born out of war. We are here. We are the members of our society, not really visible, but with help of the all youth that we were surrounded by. It was, I think, crucial. Adnan was one of the young on our beginnings, and I think that for me that gives me a hope for our country, because for understanding the war and consequences of war, because our methodology in our association is not just about understand what happened there, but what happened after, what are the consequences of war, and how we want to deal with it, and how we don't want to transfer that on the second generation, and let's fix some problems now, and maybe keep this world better for our children and the next generation. Legal part low, but still there is no law without support that we got from the youth people and generally in Bosnia. But youth were the most important, and our team in this moment and our membership, it's only youth people, and I think that we are good. We are good to go further.
That's exciting. Yeah, it's always young people. That's the common thing. We'll start with you again, Ajna, and going into the next question. We just talked about what accomplishments we've seen that we're most proud of, and what have been the proud moments. But more often than not, those are very far and few between. And more often than not, I think we're left disappointed and left, kind of with that idea that more needs to be done. Even though incremental, change might be very incremental and very slow, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. And so leading into the next question, what hasn't happened yet in terms of, the change that you want to see that keeps you fighting?
To be honest, two things that it's on my mind when you ask me that, it's violence. It's everywhere. It's every single day, in every state, every minute, and it's really exhausting, and it's a bit scary. In this moment in Bosnia, we are we surviving a lot of femicide in our country, and we have really big problem with the murders, with the gender-based violence, and also with the general criminal, and I don't know, I don't want to just say like I'm a woman and I feel safe as a human being. I'm not feel safe in this world anymore, because and I think that building the trust and building the understanding and giving the better knowledge for youth generally, it could be changed. But still, and also what I want to see is that when we talk about human rights and when we talk about violence, it's not job for this organization or this or that. We have to work on that really together, and it should be one agenda for each of us, and that's the only way. And generally, I just, in the terms of Bosnia, corruption is the main also problem here, but still I wanted to see more opportunities for youth, job opportunities, more opportunities to learn something, to be the part of the world. There is innovation out there, there is technologies out there, super science, and I want to see that in our country, and yeah, these are the, I know that it's sometimes almost impossible to get it done, but still I think that we need to follow that aim, because we need to be safe in it's important.
Yeah, no, and I think, what you said is so important and so relevant, because it's why intersectionality is so important. We can't talk about one issue without talking about another. You know, I know gun violence, I'll use that as an example. We can't talk about gun violence without talking about police brutality. We can't talk about police brutality without talking about racial injustice. We can't talk, you know, and so on and so on. And I think that's what's, you know, if groups aren't working together, you know, if we're not collaborating as a united front, there's not much we can do. You know, we're going to be very isolated and very, you know, the change we want to see isn't going to be substantial, because it's not until we kind of pool all of those resources and pull that thought together that we're really going to start to see that surrounding change that we want to see. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Adnan, we'll go to you next. You know, you told us about, you know, being able to see, you know, your child go to a school that's not ethnically segregated, but obviously, you know, you're still fighting and you're still in the work. What keeps you in? What keeps you in the fight?
Just to correct a bit, like my children are in kindergarten, so the kindergarten is not segregated. We are still having a deeply segregated educational system in our country, and actually nothing changed over the 25 years. We just had this alternative for some people who went like in this non-formal education, who could do some things differently, but the entire system is still very ethnically segregated. And there's a general a low quality of education in the country. Comparing to the PISA results, actually, we didn't took part in the latest PISA testing as a country. So it's really highly political issue regarding the educational system in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's something that it's not just the segregation, it's a general low quality of the education that keeps me into the activism, and also concerning my professional career, it really gets me going on a daily basis. So education is a live system. It should always been under some kind of reformation and trying to be better and relevant for the present moment. But I don't see that happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We still have very outdated curricula, very outdated approaches to the education and stuff. So basically, that's the issue that I'm currently facing, and I will probably be facing for some more time, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're like, once again, we're grateful that you're continuing to do the work and continue to do it, because if not you, then who? You know, if you're not doing it, if you're not on the ground doing it, then who else is going to? And I'm you know, I'm sure that's something a lot of people can relate to. Zoe, you know, you mentioned having to, you know, come out. We did a March for Our Lives again in June of 2022. The next day, we saw the Senate come out and we saw legislation get passed. What, you know, so obviously, though, that's an incremental accomplishment that we can be proud of, but what keeps you in the fight? Why are you continuing to do the work even after we see some sort of legislation, you know, get signed by the president?
You know, I think that what March for Our Lives as a whole has been able to achieve so far, you know, we've mobilized like over 2 million young people in this country, and we've made gun violence an election-defining issue finally. But at the same time, I think the culture of guns in America and how integral weapons are to our very identity and being is something that is incredibly formidable. You know, we can change laws, but we can't change the connection that many people have with guns in America. And so that's why we're still seeing 40,000 people die every single year in the United States at the hands of firearms. And that's why we're still seeing mass shootings almost every single day in this country. And so I think that when you're facing an issue as big as this, an issue that it's like now the leading cause of death for children in my country, it can be terrifying and it can feel very hopeless very easily, especially when I am doing my activism in a state where my existence as a queer person, as a young person in activism, is basically being criminalized. So that's just another layer. And that's so common in so many different states in the United States. And so I think that what keeps me going is just the idea that I know it won't get better unless people continue to make noise, because complacency is what keeps the system going and it keeps people stuck in a cycle of violence and crime and poverty. And so I think that just knowing that one day, if we work hard enough, our generation, when we come into power, we can make a change is something that is very influential in keeping me involved.
Right. And again, I think that theme of, it could be completely different. 10 years from now, it doesn't have to be, like this. Whether it's segregated schools or students staying in schools, this isn't the way that it has to be. And so I'm always glad to see that theme of we can change it and we just have to do it to get there. Christina, we'll go to you next. What keeps you in the fight? Why do you continue to do the work? Even in spite of seeing certain things that you might be proud of.
Yeah, so even though, as we mentioned, Olivia and I have had a success story at our high school, that's not the case for many students. Many students are still having to, go through censorship within their school districts and or school boards who aren't supportive of what the students want. So because that's still happening, we still need to make sure that we share our voice and we give our advice and we give our support and share our story, how we did things and help them out in any way that we can, because it's still happening and we still have those in power who want censorship in certain places in the country, even in the world. So it's really imperative that we continue to raise our voice because not everyone is as blessed to have had a story like ours.
Yeah. And then Olivia, we'll finish it off with you.
I mean, I'm just going to be kind of echoing everybody else's amazing words. But yeah, I mean, the thing that makes me continue the fight is that there's still stuff to be fighting. We still are nowhere close to everyone having, all of their rights and their freedoms and, like a peaceful life. We are still far enough away from that, we still need to keep fighting. And I mean, like, I know that personally there's a lot of changes within like healthcare, there's a lot of changes within education, with mental health. There's so many things that I want to see happen. There's so many things that need to happen that it's just I can't possibly just sit back with so much left to do. And I mean, I've already started the fight. This is probably going to end up being a lifelong thing, like making sure that I'm seeing the change that I want to see. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good segue into our next question. But I think that's, you get into this one day and you think you might just be organizing a march or organizing some demonstration, going to an event. And then, I mean, time flies and before you know it, it's a lifelong fight, like you said, and you're continuing to do it because you have to, and I think that's something that the generations before us that were in this fight for their entire lives they did and now it's really time for us to kind of take that torch and make sure that we're continuing the work and expanding on the work and continuing the fight they always have. So it's just something that we, like I said, we have to do. I wanted to, we all started somewhere. There was a day where we weren't an activist and then slowly but surely we were. And so I want to start with you, Olivia, but what advice would you give to other young people on getting into activism or getting into organizing in general, no matter what topic or issue it's around? Because as we talked about, once you're an organizer in one space, you're kind of an organizer in all spaces. But what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out?
So something that I kind of talk about frequently, and this is kind of echoing the words of Zoe in particular. I always talk about how breaking the silence is the hardest part. And I use the analogy of a classroom. When you're sitting in a classroom and it's silent, that silence is deafening. You don't want to open a bag. You don't want to write too loud, like breathe too loud. Like the silence is so loud. But the second that someone breaks that, starts whispering to their friend, or opens a bag, like ruffles some papers, that silence is broken. And soon you have an entirely loud classroom that the teacher is fighting to maintain. So just that first whisper is the hardest part. But once you do that, everybody else will join you. So I would say my advice is if you're speaking out on an issue or if you feel passionate about an issue, you're going to feel like you're alone, but you are nowhere close to alone. Everybody else is probably just as scared as you and don't want to say anything and holding those opinions to themselves. But once they see that it's safe to do so, or once they see that there are other people that are like them that have that same opinion, they will have your back. So it's like, it's scary to initially say something, Um, but I promise you, you won't be alone. And you just have to find that community. You have to find that group of people that you know will support you no matter what. And just make sure that you have their back and they have yours. And I think something that we definitely need more of is activists in politics. And what I mean is actually in the career of politics. Like that's why I'm on the path I am. I'm majoring in political science, and I think that so many more activists should do that because I feel like they're the ones who get it. Like they're the ones who know what changes need to be made, and are willing to fight for that. And we need more people like that, more people who are prioritizing the good of the world and not the good of themselves. And I think I see that trend with so many activists. I mean, I've gotten the opportunity to talk to so many incredible people, and every single person I talk to, I am fully certain, without a doubt, can change the world and probably has already changed the world. And is so capable of so many good things, especially if they're given a spot in office or given one of those positions where they get to use all of the power they were able to create for themselves just as a regular person, and have that power at a political level. I think can just do so much good, and it's what I want to see. So I'm really glad that Gen Z is, specifically Gen Z, obviously we have so many incredible people fighting, but I'm really happy to see specifically Gen Z getting so involved in this, because it makes me really really hopeful for what our world is going to look like in a few years down the line, when millennials and Gen Z are the people in charge. So yeah, my advice is to just stand up, keep fighting, use your voice, and I promise you, you won't be alone.
That's perfect. And I think here in Arizona, we had a lot of students who were involved with March for Our Lives. And something we talked a lot about was mental health and mental health support in schools. And at first it was really hard to get any sort of the boards to do anything about it, to get any sort of movement, until students started running. They started running for positions on various school boards across the Phoenix area. And now there's multiple boards out there with Gen Zers in particular on it, who are doing great things and making strides because they know the fight. But on top of that, I think they're a lot more open to listening when people come and have suggestions and have concerns, because that's they were there, they know it. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate that insight. Christina, we'll go to you next. What advice would you have to any young activists or people that want to get into activism? What advice would you have before as they get into
My advice is to stay persistent, because when you first start out, you might not get the results you want. And that happened with us in our school district, where we were protesting and our school district doubled down and sent an email saying, we're standing by our decision. But we just had to keep on going. So activism is a journey, and you're going to have times where it seems as though nothing's happening. You're not getting the results you're looking for. You're just going to keep on going. It seems like no one's listening, but consistency is key. And so my advice is just to stay consistent. Know that you're doing the right thing, follow your heart, follow your moral compass, and you will then see results. And just be very patient and be open to hearing new ideas, be open to hearing others, and also be open to hearing the other side. It's very important that as an activist that you listen to the opposing arguments in order to have a well-rounded knowledge on what's going on. So that is my advice, is to make sure that you stay consistent, stay patient, and just keep the fight, and take care of your mental health as well. It's very important. Activism burnout is a real thing. And it's very imperative that you have people in your corner that, can help, you can pass the torch on to rest for a bit and then take your torch back, because you cannot help others if you do not help yourself.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Thank you, Christina. That's, I think that's something that, even some of us that have been doing it for a long time, you forget. And it's easy to get caught up, but I think you summed it up perfectly. You can't help others if you can't help yourself. And that's important, to just keep that mindset, even though, it might feel like you're letting people down, you're not. And it's just so important to stay diligent in the fight. So thank you, Christina. Zoe, we'll go to you next. What advice would you give to other young people that want to get into activism?
That's actually a perfect segue because the first thing I was going to say is that all the things that we have been fighting for on this panel, whether it be about sexual violence, wartime violence, racism, book bans, anything, gun violence, this is all very emotionally draining work. These are issues that have had serious impacts on our lives, but also on the lives of all of those around us in our communities and our countries. And so I think that before you get involved in activism, I would take a moment to just reflect on yourself and question if you're mentally ready to put yourself into an environment like that. And if you're not, I would wait for a time to do so because mental health is the most important factor, and you cannot be an effective activist if you're not in the right mindset. And I think besides that, making sure you take advantage of your pre-existing passions and skills. So like, for example, I love public speaking because I've been doing debate at my school since I was in junior high. So the thing that I like the most in activism is being able to speak with people like I am right now. And that's my strength. If your strength is writing, you can write, opinion pieces for local newspapers. If your strength is art, there's so many ways to use art as a force of activism. Things like that. Knowing your power and your interest in something you're passionate about, it's so easy to tie that into activism. And there are so many different local organizations that you can reach out to harness that power. You can reach out to any of the organizations we're a part of. You can find local organizations in your community. And I think that's the last thing, making sure that you stay involved in your community and understand the opinions of those around you, because it can be very frustrating to be surrounded by people who are reinforcing the structures that are keeping you and other people oppressed. So that's like how, in my home state of Florida, it is so scary to be a queer person right now. But leaning on other people in your community is the most important part because it reminds you that you're not alone in that fight. And so those are just like a few pieces of advice I'd recommend.
That's awesome, Zoe. It reminds me of an analogy someone gave last campaign cycle, and they used sunflowers as an analogy. And they said that sunflowers, when the sun is shining, they all face the sun. But if there's some that aren't, that don't have access, they can't see the sun, they look at the flowers that can. I don't know how it works. I'm not sure. I'm not a sunflower expert, but the sunflowers will face the sunflowers that can see, or they'll face each other instead of facing the sun. And they use that as an example of, if you can't draw the energy yourself, rely on the people around you and rely on the other organizers in your space, because that's they know what you're going through, and it helps kind of keep that fight together. So thank you. Adnan, we'll go to you. What advice would you have for young people getting into activism?
Maybe first thing would be read widely, like learn from the experience of other people, find something that you're closely connected to, that is important to you, and then do your part. It will make your life much more interesting than just sitting and looking what's happening in the world and not doing anything. I mean, you will probably get along. I mean, you will make it even if you don't do anything, but there are certain issues that you cannot just stay individualistic so much, because there are common things for us as a human beings, as a societies. Then when issue is when issue is tackled and you solve it, you just don't solve it just for yourself. It's something that you actually have to do with the other people and also for the other people. So yeah, that would be some, of course, agreeing with what others have said, but trying to really understand what you are doing and really try to do those things. I mean, trying to find the right moment to act might not always be the good strategy, because when you will know if you are ready unless you try it. So don't be so hesitant. It's totally fine to make mistake, to learn from it, and then try again. And that's activism, like not sitting and be observer of your own life, of what's happening in your surroundings, but really acting upon it.
Yeah, that sums it up. That's activism. Thank you, Adnan. Ina, you'll answer our question and be the last answer for the day. So I know, what advice would you give to other young people getting into action?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Just kidding. Yeah, I think that it's really important. Yeah, if you started the activism, I think that's important to understand that changes they just don't come always, without efforts, and they are not there if you are not engaged enough. And from my experience, when you start and you find something unexpected on your way, just gather the people around you, gather the team, because I think it's really, really important that we are in the team, because it's easier and healthier from my perspective. And I don't know, I think that we all have some thoughts and opinions, but we need to understand that people who have different opinion or thoughts, they are still people with who we have to live. So we need to build a community also with the people with the different opinions. And as Olivia said before, Gen Z is here, and I think it should be game changer. Let's change the game, and let's use understanding as a weapon, not violence as a weapon, and let's not use prejudice. Let's use dialogue, and that's it, because it's a new generation, and we need to just accept it. But if we want that other people accept that we are here, we need to build something new, and we need to put some color in this world. And I'm really looking forward to it, because as other panelists said, you can feel that in the air in this moment. And for a few years, I think that we're gonna be somewhere positive. I hope so.
Thank you, Ina. And thank you to all of our panelists, Adnan, Ina, Zoe, Christina, and Olivia. Thank you guys all for being here. I think that was a great discussion. And I going back and finishing on something Olivia said, it might seem like it's really silent and that it's going to be, it'll be too much to kind of break that silence. But as soon as you do, you'll find out that there's a whole network of people out there that support you, whether it's they'll come march with you, they'll support you financially, they'll, even are sharing your stuff on social media. There's a huge network of people out there, always to be a support network. It's just about taking that first step. So thank you all of our panelists for being here. And I will pass it back to Kate and Matthew.
Thank you, Jacob. And thank you to all the panelists. That was incredible. Personally, I felt inspired, moved. I feel like there's great hope for the future. So EIHR has developed a coalition of educators and human rights organizations called the Right to Learn Coalition, R2L, which seeks to protect children's rights to learn in the United States. And I'm going to turn it over to Kate, our executive director, who's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And once again, thank you to all of you. Things I was appreciating as I was watching on the gallery style view of Zoom was how many times you all were nodding in agreement with one another, and how many ways I heard that your work connected between each of you to other things. I feel like there's an opportunity for collaboration here that we should pursue beyond this webinar. And speaking of those opportunities for collaboration, a while back we did a webinar on trauma and healing in the classroom. Given the climate that the world is in currently and continues to ratchet up, as we all can see. And it made us reflect on the history that we know at EIHR. Our work is grounded in understanding Holocaust history and how to teach about that history as well as contemporary atrocities. So we were looking at that history and looking at the warning signs for contemporary atrocities. And then we started hearing from our colleagues in our global network expressing concern about what they were seeing happening in American news. And we were hearing from those US teachers that had been on those trauma and healing workshops saying, how do we deal with this? We're seeing censorship. We're seeing people come into our rooms and take away materials and shutting down school board meetings and threats of violence in ways that we haven't seen before. So as an organization, we thought, well, how can we contribute to a solution? And so we arrived at looking at the broader human rights community and how they could be supporting teachers and how they could be supporting your work as young people. And so that's where the Right to Learn Coalition comes from. It includes a lot of major human rights organizations that you'd recognize, like Human Rights Watch, the Anti-Defamation League, PEN America, and a number of others. If I try to list them all, I'll fail abominably. But you can find them on our website, and you can find materials from each of those organizations that can, particularly in the US, but many of them are applicable globally. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware that that exists, that there are adults and teachers that love and support your work. And we'd love to keep talking with you about all of this in that context as well. So thank you very much for being with us and sharing all of this today.
Great. Thank you, Kate. So please look for an email in the coming days with a link to the webinar recording, the resources that have been provided, and further information about our upcoming events. Again, I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for being here today. I appreciate your advocacy work, your passion. I wish you all the best of luck in your pursuits. And thank you all. Have a great afternoon or evening, wherever you are located.